Welcome back into HQ. Georgia has enjoyed a 2-year reign as college football's top dog, but their position at the peak of the sport doesn't look to be going away anytime soon. Kirby Smart's squad returns 16 players with starting experience, and they might see an upgrade at the sport's most important position, which is why our Dennis Dodd has the Bulldogs as the #1 team in his post-spring top 25, behind the defending two-time champs, his two-time Big Ten champs, Michigan. Behind them, it's fellow Big Ten East foes, Ohio State, Penn State. Then it's Washington, Bama, Florida State, LSU, Notre Dame, and Clemson, rounding out the top 10. Let's hear more from the man himself. It's CBS Sports senior writer Dennis Dodd here to explain those rankings. So let's start at the top. And it looks, go back to less than a quarter through the national championship game for the college football collective to kind of turn our attention to the 2023 season. We all looked at that schedule and realized pretty favorable for Georgia. I think you called it Charmin soft. Why, in addition to the schedule, are things lining up for Kirby Smart's squad to win a third straight national title?
Yeah, Emily, think about this. #1 after winning 2 consecutive championships, and it's never been done in the history of at least the wire service poll since 1936, 3 in a row. And I think you've just got to assume it right now, pending injury or whatever. They've got 22 positions on the field, right? They can fill them with as many as 16 players who have starting experience. And that's after these last 2 drafts where they lost 15, a record 15 in 2021. And then in 6 first-round draft choice that year, and then Jalen Carter and a raft of other players this year. And they've got 16 maybe starters back. That includes Carson Beck, who has stuck around a couple of years at quarterback. They've got the best of everything. Kirby Smart has 24 years on Nick Saban if he wants to chase him. He's got the world's largest recruiting budget at $4.5 million, which I dare say might be the more than anybody makes as a head coach in the MAC or Sun Belt, something like that. But that schedule, they got Auburn at the end of September, probably won't be challenged after that till mid-November when they go to Tennessee. You could easily project the Bulldogs into the SEC championship game, and even with a loss at that point, could make the college football play.
You're using that recruiting budget wisely, also bringing in some high-end transfers. Let's move to your #2 team, though, Michigan. Based on returning production alone, the case is there for the Wolverines to be right back in the college football playoff. But how do you like their chances to make it to that final game of the season?
Well, look, they've lost the last 2 games of the semifinals, and I think they've learned lessons. I remember doing a story before the TCU game, going around and asking players, were you just glad to be there in that Georgia game 2 years ago? And to a man, they said yes. It was quite a breakthrough for Michigan to do that. Now, last year, we can have another show about what they did against TCU. Too many points, too many yards, should have won the game. But this year is the best Michigan has been under Jim Harbaugh in his 9 years at the school. And I would dare say, maybe one of the better Michigan teams of all time. You've got Blake Corum, who comes back really unexpectedly because he had that knee injury. I think he would have been out, but he comes back and is going to be a Heisman contender. J.J. McCarthy is going to be a difference maker at quarterback. He started trending towards that by the end of the season. And then consider the offensive line, Emily, which has been the best in the country, winning the Joe Moore Award 2 years running. So even if they take hits on the offensive line, they're going to be very, very good. Get used to more bully ball at Michigan. And by the way, Ohio State, you might want to look into your rearview mirror.
Whew, yeah, it took a few years, but Harbaugh did get over that Ohio State hump. 2 years in a row winners of the game. So let's talk about those Buckeyes at #3 in your rankings. What question marks do you have about this Ryan Day group coming in to the upcoming season?
On both lines, they've got to get better on the defensive line after losses there. On the offensive line, they lose 3 starters, including Paris Johnson Jr., who went in the first round to Arizona. That's not to say they can't. Ryan Day reloads there. But the problem is, and this is going to be a great soap opera throughout the season, I just referenced it, Ohio State absolutely has to beat Michigan. Now you say, or what, or else. I don't know what that looks like. There was a lot of pressure on Ryan Day when he lost, got blown out at home last year, even though I think it was his 2nd or 3rd Big Ten loss in the time he's been there. So they replaced C.J. Stroud with, right now, it looks like Kyle McCord, although there is a competition there going into August. He completed 71% in his career, 184 yards in the spring game. So there's optimism there. But this kind of Michigan thing kind of hovers over the whole season. You can easily see Ohio State winning all of its games right down to that game, by the way, at Michigan this year. And what are the ramifications if they don't win? It's going to be fascinating.
Very fascinating. Got a lot of Big Ten East teams in that top 5. Let's go to number 6, though, where we find Alabama, of course, making headlines during the spring portal window, adding another quarterback to that competition. You got Tyler Buckner joining an already tight battle between Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe. So how do you anticipate the quarterback room to shake out at Alabama?
Yeah, this is another weird one. I just told you this is the best Michigan team in 9 years under Jim Harbaugh. This is arguably Nick Saban's worst quarterback room in the time he's been there. What does it say when you have to bring in Tyler Buckner as a transfer from Notre Dame to compete for a job with Jalen Milroe, who to this point has shown to be somewhat of just a wildcat quarterback, and then the youngster Ty Simpson? You go from maybe the best player in the history of your program, and Bryce Young, certainly the #1 overall draft choice, to this. So there's going to have to be some change at Alabama. I think they're going to go more to the running game this year. They're going to rely on a strong defense and maybe be more balanced. You're not going to see a lot of over-the-top plays. Ja'Cory Brooks is their best receiver coming back. He's got the best chance to take the top off some defenses. But there are a lot of people, and I almost went there, that think that LSU is going to win the SEC West this year. And Alabama, that would suggest then that Alabama is not going to make the playoff in consecutive years for the first time.
All right, let's talk about the team that Buckner transferred from, Notre Dame, number 9, adding a transfer quarterback of their own in Sam Hartman. How does adding him elevate expectations in South Bend?
Well, it's a difference-making quarterback, absolutely. A Heisman-worthy discussion guy. Sam Hartman from Wake Forest, all-time leading passer at Wake, goes to Notre Dame, and he's got weapons. They have 18-year-old Jaden Greathouse, who had 10 receptions in the spring game. Jaden Thomas looks like the next game breaker, an 81-yard receiver in that game. But I think the pressure's sort of off of Marcus Freeman right now. That 0-2 start, they go 9-2 the rest of the year, get to a major bowl game. And they've got the hardest games at home this year. Ohio State, USC, Pittsburgh, and Wake Forest. I'm not saying it's the hardest game, but that's Sam Hartman's, return to his old teammates game. So that could be huge. I see Notre Dame as an outside playoff contender this year, considering what they have back on both lines, but they are certainly set at quarterback.
And no quarterback question marks for the Trojans, as well as the reigning Heisman winner returns to USC. But it's a team game. So what do you need to see from Lincoln Riley's team to consider them playoff contenders?
Well, look, Emily, we know Caleb Williams could win back-to-back Heismans. He could throw for 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, but there's a familiar pattern developing down in Los Angeles. Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator that Lincoln Riley took with him from Oklahoma, his defense just isn't measuring up. They won all those Big 12 titles, went to 3 playoffs, but got exposed in those playoff games because of defense. Well, that happened at USC last year late, when it looked like they were headed to a playoff. They lost twice to Utah, and then Tulane in the bowl game, giving up a total of 136 points. The defense has to get better, and I think it will. They've got 8 starters returning on defense, including one of the bigger transfer portal guys in the offseason, Bear Alexander, a defensive lineman from Georgia. They're hanging a lot of hope on him. But look, at the end of the day, whether USC sinks or swims is going to be on that arm and those legs of Caleb Williams. He's able to win games by himself.
Let's wrap it up quick with the Longhorns, who you have at number 17 in your post-spring top 25. What should the expectation of success be for Texas?
A lot of people think they're the best team in the Big 12. But Emily, how many times have we said that since 2009, which is the last year Texas won a conference championship? In fact, it's been so long, Kansas State has won 2 Big 12 titles since that year. So what does that say about Texas? Well, we'll believe it when we see it. Yes, they may have the most talent in the Big 12, particularly on defense, but offensively, they're absolutely loaded. The only question mark to me is Quinn Ewers, who was a little bit inconsistent, unsteady last year. He has won the job already, but we'll be looking over his shoulder at a guy named Arch Manning, Archie's grandson, who had a little bit of hype coming in. but they've got weapons. Xavier Worthy returns at receiver. A.D. Mitchell, who caught the game-winning touchdown against Alabama in the national championship game for Georgia a couple of years ago. And watch a guy named C.J. Baxter, a freshman running back who will be asked to replace Bijan Robinson.
Just a little bit of hype for Arch Manning, just a little bit. Dennis Dodd, thank you so much. You can read his work at cbssports.com. And for more college football coverage, check out the Cover 3 podcast. Chip Patterson, Danny Cannell, Bud Elliott, and Tom Bernelli get you ready for the upcoming season and give their take on the sport's biggest storylines.